Hello, everyone. My name's David Apple, and I'll be your host for today's webinar covering BMC Helix Discovery. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. We have quite the audience here, folks from all different parts of the country throughout North America, representing a lot of different industries on the call today. So again, thanks everybody for taking time out of their day to talk to us and listen to us. Just to give a quick overview, here at Flycast Partners, we've worked with over 1,000 organizations in North America, helping them increase their ITIL maturity and gaining efficiencies in how they deliver services to your end users. As an elite partner with BMC, we're able to assist our clients in your digital transformation, be it through evaluating and implementing the most cutting edge solutions from BMC has to offer, or by simply reviewing your ITSM strategy and then focusing on the people, the process, and the technology in those areas. Today, we have Flycast's own expert on BMC Discovery, Kyle Hamilton, to present. Now, Kyle is a former BMC consultant, and he's a systems engineer here at Flycast. And Kyle, you'll be taking us through the value and the need for organizations not only in discovering your assets, but also in the mapping of the services throughout a complex on-premise or multi-cloud environments. So, Kyle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good, pretty good. So thank you, sir. And yeah, can you kind of shed a little bit light on not only how BMC users could benefit or might want to review the Helix Discovery solution, but really independent of any type of ITSM solution you're using, why these tools are so valuable and important for organizations.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think everybody that I talk to expresses the desire or has an interest in having the type of data that tools like BMC Discovery can provide, whether they know it all the time or not. Is still is up for question. Sometimes they're asking for things and it leads, back to a discovery solution like BMC Discovery in order to fit that requirement, even though they might not know that that's what they're looking for. So hopefully through today's, discussion and presentation, you come away with, a good understanding of really the idea, what kind of data BMC Discovery can collect and provide, and how that provides a meaning to your operations, to your support. How this type of the information that BMC Discovery can go out and automatically collect can allow you to accurately maintain a CMDB. And quite honestly, I would say in the vast majority of cases with those that are on the phone, not knowing anything specific about anybody, I would say y'all are probably all in environments that in order to build and maintain a CMDB and keep it accurate, it's almost a necessity to have a tool similar to this or this to be able to maintain accuracy without having to devote an entire army of individuals. Not just when you think about what you have out there that you need to maintain in terms of inventory, knowing what assets you have and where they're located and who's in charge of them, et cetera, who supports them, but also having a good understanding of how these devices are related and what applications are out there in the environment that they rely on and are supported by, and what are the databases that they report from and pull data from in their web applications. So getting a good understanding of your environment is going to provide across the board, improvements, whether it be troubleshooting with the customer on the phone and having an understanding of where they sit in the environment and where their services are coming from and where the potential problems may lie, understanding that path, or analyzing a problem. And if you're dealing with problem management and root cause analysis, being able to have the type of BMC discovery data so that you don't have to convene a conference room full of network engineers and system admins and application owners to be able to get a full picture of what's going on. And often that's the case. This information that Discovery collects is often already in the environment, but it's in pockets or it's in brain pans and different people floating around. Everybody has a small piece of it. When something needs to be done, when some kind of massive rollout takes place, or you're re-architecting the organization, perhaps, that's when those people convene, is when massive changes take place. But when you're talking about all the day-to-day changes, application updates, patches, accounts being created, accounts being disabled and deleted, those are all things that you need to track and need to be aware of, but quite often get missed. And so BMC Discovery is designed to really help fill in the gap for a lot of customers when it comes to inventory/discovery solutions. A lot of customers focus first on the client side, and that's most often out of necessity. And those are the individuals that are calling the service desk. Those are the ones that reach out for support when they have problems. So those are the people you want to understand them first. But what quite often then is lacking is a good understanding of the data center, the back of the house, all of the components and applications and devices that those users rely on, but it's not contained within their desktop or their laptop or their printer. And so quite often those things fall into spreadsheets, one maintained by the network team and another by the applications group, or it's department by department. So again, the data may be there, but putting all the pieces together and being able to build that full picture out of all those puzzle pieces is often difficult. Now, BMC Discovery is one of my favorite products that I've worked with at BMC, for one major reason. It is extremely simple and easy in what it does. Let's call it elegant. It provides a lot of power and a lot of capability, but it doesn't require a lot of effort to wring out that power out of the tool. It takes, I would say, roughly on average about maybe 2 to 3 hours to get everything up and running and going. And it's not uncommon for customers. I've been in environments where we've rolled this out, some universities, where by the end of the first day, we had roughly mapped out about 92, 93% of the campus environment. And this was roughly between 9, 10,000 devices spread out between servers and virtual machines and desktops across the campus. But this is a tool that you can deploy it rapidly, because it's deployed to customers primarily as a virtual appliance. It can be a physical appliance if you prefer that. They do have the hardware, but it's primarily just deployed as a virtual machine. And so the vast majority of deploying this in the environment is really a file download. Putting this onto a virtual host of your choosing and starting up that virtual machine. And then there's a couple of steps to give it an IP address. And that's really all the configuration that's necessary to stand this BMC Discovery server up. Then you're ready to start pointing it at the environment and executing the scans and the discovery runs, so that you can collect all the relevant information you're looking for. So I'm going to log in here to the web console, where we can take a look not only at what I just mentioned, and you start pointing this to the environment and collecting the data, but then what that data looks like and what some of that means to you, how you can use it. So I mentioned once you deploy this in the environment, being able to quickly start getting results immediately, once you start hitting the button. And that's done through what's referred to as discovery runs. And that's, got an S on it on purpose. You're typically not going to point this at, a Class A network and hit go, unless you want to wait a long time to get the results back. So you're going to break it up in logical chunks. It may just be subnet by subnet, or just an IP range that you want to throw at it. Particular application, a list of specific IPs that make up a particular application you're trying to map out. However you want to break that up, not only so that you don't inundate, try and collect everything at once and just inundate the network, but also to be able to schedule those discovery runs in a staggered fashion based on criticality. So there may be devices that you're discovering that, certain devices you want to keep a little bit closer watch on than others that might not be as critical. It'll hurt if it goes down, but we won't be crippled. But if this goes down, that's going to be bad news. So that type of priority can factor into breaking things out so that I can group all those critical devices and do a scan of those, a run of that IP range daily, whereas those less critical devices I might fall back to a weekly or monthly schedule just to make sure it's still out there every once in a while. But these runs then go out based on that schedule, and they start hitting all of those IP addresses within that range so they can collect all the information you want. The second reason that I like working with BMC Discovery, besides the fact that you can start getting results out of this almost immediately, is the power and capability it provides to get a lot of good, valuable information from every part of your landscape. And this is what really separates this tool, is really kind of the scope and the depth from a discovery perspective, not just talking about client server environment even. Of course, it does everything from Windows to Mac to Unix and Linux, and you can see some of the different flavors in here, and it gives you the flexibility to go in and edit the scripts and configure the discovery, so you can get very granular. We're not going to get into those details, but needless to say, this is a tool that for those that are looking to really map out the deep details of your environment, it's going to give you the ability to collect all of that data, up to and including things like mainframe devices, mid-range like AS400, IS400 devices, going all the way back to Novell NetWare, if it's still out there anywhere. So if it's out there, essentially BMC Discovery is going to find it. This covers, talks about the platforms that BMC Discovery covers, but at the same time, it also covers a broad range of that infrastructure that I was talking about, the data center, the back of house equipment. So we're not talking about a Dell desktop, we're talking about a Brocade switch or a Cisco router. So that's where the BMC Discovery coverage from a vendor and device perspective eclipses the other products that are out there, so that if you've got, and this is something that's updated on a month by month basis, so every 30 days there is another update, referred to as a knowledge update, that gets pushed out. And those knowledge updates are pushed simply for the purpose of making sure that all of the new Cisco hardware or all the new Bay networks, switches have been added into the discovery database, so that when that next discovery run comes up, it's correctly identifying, those devices that just rolled off the assembly line, last month or month before last, or maybe 6 months ago, when things slowing down. But that way, you're sure that when you point this at your environment and say, go tell me what's out there and how it's connected, that you're going to be getting some accurate information. You're not going to be missing pockets or have black holes within that picture, because Discovery doesn't have any visibility to be able to query those devices or those applications. So when you go out and point this at the environment, what kind of information does it collect when we run all those scripts? So back here on this home page, this is one of several dashboard views. I'll talk about several others in a moment. This is what they call the baseline dashboard. It really just takes all of the infrastructure devices that have been discovered and breaks them down into logical groups. So you've got your cloud services that you're leveraging, those like AWS or OpenStack and Azure, things like that, all the way to local infrastructure like your switches and routers and printers, et cetera, and again all the way up to mainframes and mid-range storage containers and devices. If I want to take start drilling into software instances, it's a little over or just under 3,000 instances of software out there. So I want to get an understanding of what software is out there and what's it doing, why is it there. So when I select, let's say I want to take a look at this Apache Tomcat server right here. Let's go ahead and just click that one, and we'll say visualize it or model it. And it'll bring it up in a display here. It'll let me see this Tomcat, Apache Tomcat's running on this MCR server that you see down here below. And if I click on the little plus signs that you see next to it, if there's any other connections to that node, it'll go ahead and expand it out. In this case, it's showing me all of the other services besides Tomcat 6 that are running on that box along with Tomcat 6. Now, this one that I just pulled up here, even though it has quite a few services running on, it's a relatively small map. Because when you look at this and just think about the data behind this, right? If I select this Tomcat version, for example, and I scroll down to the bottom down here, and notice all this information that it gives me on that particular copy of Apache Tomcat. So it gives me details of the versions and what ports it's out there, what listening ports are open on the box that it's listening for communications on, giving me details of customizations, so the resource files on the box, so like the config files, so you can actually be able to view the details of those config files to be able to get an understanding of how is this Tomcat server listening on the right ports. So all of this detail related to the device and what it's talking with and what it's communicating to is collected with that the agentless scan of the those discovery runs, which by the way I don't know that I even call that out, but I don't know that I heard me mention anything about deploying anything. And that's because there are no agents with BMC Discovery. That virtual appliance that I mentioned that needs to be put on your network, that is the only thing to be done. So there are no agents to be put out on the network, no other listeners or repeaters or whatever they might be called. All of this is going to be done from one central point. So there's no need for additional infrastructure. You're not going to be distributing or fanning anything out there, storing any files anywhere else. All of this is done across the wire, running commands remotely without having to install anything on devices, which is a big concern, especially when we're dealing with the data center and talking about servers and business critical devices. The last thing you want to do is and I have to think about installing one more agent along with all the other agents that are probably already out there running. So this doesn't provide any additional overhead from those endpoints or those servers when you're doing that discovery. So it can go out and collect all of this information related to the application. So what applications do I have out there, and how are they configured? And what are they talking to? So you can get a good understanding of how your apps are actually communicating. Well, let's take an example of. So I want to find a SQL box. So I search for SQL. You'll see it shows me. Now I've got a lot of different databases out there related to SQL, but I'm at 62 different instances of Microsoft SQL running out there. And I'll see it gives me kind of the same list that I saw before. I'm also at some Azure boxes, which I'm going to select in this case, just so you'll see some of the difference that I mentioned. As this is another key feature of BMC Discovery is the ability to go out and not only discover your local infrastructure, but be able to reach out into AWS, into Azure, into OpenStack, and others like that, so that including if you're containerized, or if you're using everything's in Kubernetes containers and you need to be able to do discovery on your apps running in Kubernetes or Docker, we can, if in that IP address range, we don't care if it's in your data center or if it's in Microsoft's Azure data center. All of that information can be pulled back right here in the same place. So if I go, we'll come back to that in just a moment. I'm going to talk to you about the publishing, but look right here on that baseline dashboard, it allows me to see, my Azure nodes, being pulled directly from. Here's my AWS compute nodes, EC2 computing nodes and storage nodes. And for any of these, I'll get the same. So I'll be able to actually see the infrastructure, not just what's in my network, but also what's reaching out, what's connecting out there into, AWS and Azure. Now, I'm going to go back to this last little graphic, but I'm going to do a quick search here on publishing and talk a little about the benefit of being able to put some business context onto this data. Take something like this, for example. This tells me a lot of technical stuff, but very little about the business. Very little about the business service. In other words, what do all these machines and these services and these databases and these Azure VMs, what do they support? What do they do? Is it payroll? Is it, providing print spooling? Is it driving some, web application? That's the business context. And that's where being able to use Discovery, not to show you what it's found, but also be able to add to it, to be able to put some business context and model on top of this, so that I can take data that's discovered, like we're looking at here, and be able to say, this is my payroll system. And that's what I've done. If I look at publishing, in this case, we'll see that it comes back with a match. It shows me there's a one business service out there that matches that particular topic. And if I pull up the model view for that, you can see right in the middle, I've got this node with the publishing service. So you can go in once you've done the discovery and be able to select from those nodes that you've discovered, those applications, those switches, those routers, those SQL databases. Go in and pick them one by one, or you can go in, and it's simple to do, where you can go in and, you can grab, odd groupings and even pull in different maps and grab, from different, groups if I'm looking at different lists, and be able to pull them all into one place and then throw some of that business model, some of that business context onto it, so that now I can, just like now when I'm coming into search versus having to go in and look for a SQL Server or type in an IP address or some host name. Now I'm going to say, show me the publishing service. And it automatically pulls in the databases and the services and all of the app servers and communications that are out there in my environment as well as cloud that underpin or back up that publishing service. So from a networking and monitoring standpoint, things are much more business aware, rather than receiving an event notification that says, this service just went down on IP address, 10.10 or whatever. Now you can actually get an alert that says, maybe it has that piece in it, but it says, by the way, that's impacting your ability to, print, publish magazines, if that's what you're doing, or whatever that may be. So now it has some business context and some meaning. We can't print, we can't issue checks, we can't, bring the network back up, whatever the case may be. This gives you some of that context, so that when events occur and you need to notify, or you need to create a ticket within your IT service management solution, you're able to have some business context without you having to make that determination, to have to look at that IP address and know in your head, okay, I know what that server is, and I know what it does. That's lucky if it happens to be just like that. More often than not, the person getting notified is not the person that can make that determination easily. They have, a particular skill set, but having a business understanding of, working on one device versus another, is often not within their viewpoint. And so this gives them some ability, so that when that notification goes out, you can let them know, hey, this is a critical business service. We need to get on this right away, because this is impacting, our core business. Now, beyond application data, or even, business context data, there's some good business intelligence data that you can wring out of BMC Discovery for a lot of different purposes. Like, let's take this one, for example. So common use case for BMC Discovery is going to be things like data center consolidation and also data center moves. So in data center consolidation, like the dashboard we're looking at here, you're able to take that discovered data and provide it back in the form of a dashboard that can show you, what machines out there have what kind of compute power do you have. And so this kind of shows me, what kind of horsepower do I have floating around out there? How many of my devices have, 8 CPUs versus 4 CPUs, memory, thing like that. And this is, kind of grouping them, right, based on that CPU count, speed. Right? So how many large compute devices do you have that fall into that category versus those that are small to medium compute? So you can get an idea for, where do those consolidation opportunities exist? Where do I have, lots of memory, lots of horsepower, so I can start using those as potential targets. And also being able to look at, now my environment's fairly static, but in a real world environment, those lines will actually be, moving like a stock ticker, so that you can actually see your virtualization over time. as you've got virtual machines come and go, get spun up, get torn down. That'll allow you to be able to track and also plan for future virtualization, needs and efforts. Also, which devices are already hosting the most, which ones are underutilized. So again, you can see where each one of these different elements can be used, where you got lots of horsepower and very little hosted software on those devices. Maybe I can, hit that as a candidate. That's why I can start, drilling in and opening up that diagram to take a look more in depth at, okay, it's only hosting one app. Let's go see what that app is and make sure we understand what business service that may be, providing. So before we just go slamming other software on there and creating a problem. But, this kind of information helps point you in the direction when you're doing a consolidation after saying, here's your likely candidates, those that have lots of power, but don't appear to be, widely used or widely or overly used. Same thing would go for, let's actually take this one here. So this one is going to do the same thing, but specifically related to cloud. So this is where I can actually go in and see, number one, which cloud providers am I leveraging? I don't know, I mentioned Google before. Of course, Google's another. And how am I leveraging those platforms? Or I have running on Google versus on, Azure or AWS in this case. So again, being able to go out and visualize and model, see, okay, what am I leveraging in AWS? It's broken down by region. So then I can start drilling down, and taking a look at, all right, what's US East Coast got going on? And I can start expanding this out. And that's when I can take this, and if I want to put some business context on it, once I spend some time figuring out what I've got in AWS and what it's doing, that's the point where I'd want to put some modeling on this and say, okay, I'm going to leave some information behind so that next person that needs something can look at this and immediately see, okay, I know exactly what these devices and applications do. But that same dashboard provides you a lot of information, as well as the other one, in terms of data center moves. What kind of machines do we need to replicate on the other side? Or disaster recovery is another perfect example. If you need to have cold standbys waiting for everything you've got out there, you need to make sure you've got an up-to-date, accurate representation of what you got out there, so you keep that standby environment ready to go. And one of the important pieces and nice things that BMC Discovery can give you is some intelligence as well. So it's not just blindly kind of spitting the information back at you and saying, here's what I found. It can actually infer some data. It's actually, there's a reasoning engine that's built into Discovery, so that you have two kinds of information you'll see within this Discovery portal. One is called DDD, directly discovered data, and then you have what's referred to as reasoned data. So kind of like it sounds, directly discovers that stuff you go out and you query, or you write a command, issue a command, and you get some result back. So you've got direct results. Reasoned data is not something we directly queried and we weren't directly told, but we can infer it. We can assume it logically. And this is this report or list that I've got up on the screen is a perfect example of that. So here are a list of cloud hosts that are out there within my environment that I do not have a good inventory on. I haven't scanned these machines yet. I don't have good detail, good information on them. So why are they in this report? Well, they're in this report because I didn't, Discovery inferred that those instances are out there. Not because it found them directly, but because it went out and talked to a device or a computer or a application that mentioned it. When we went out and queried, application, Apache Tomcat as an example, and we're collecting all this information from Apache Tomcat, in the course of that conversation, Apache Tomcat says, oh, by the way, I'm talking to this Elastic Compute instance running over an AWS over here on the 184.73. And Discovery is essentially going to go, no, I did not know that, but thank you for letting me know. And it throws it on this list. Now, when I pull up this list, it tells me about all those conversations that are happening out there with individuals or machines in this case that I'm not aware of. They know they're taking place because we've talked to one individual that was party to the conversation. And I said, I've been talking to this machine. You might want to go take a look. And so that's what this list provides. It lets you know there are instances, there are devices out there as of this moment that do not exist in the database, but they are out there on your network, and we know some rough information about them. But you might want to include them in the next discovery run so that we can fill in the details and make sure we understand what that is. So this can really be important because it's easy to know what you know about and tell it go discover all these devices. It's the things that you're not aware of that may be out there, or that you forgot you were leveraging, or oh yeah, I forgot we put those things on that network, that could be critical when you're doing those data center moves and disaster recovery, because it's those very things you forget that have been kind of shuttled off to the side that can be problematic when the power comes back up, or emergency backup at least. So some great information to help you, fill in those gaps, keep from shooting yourself in the foot in many cases. So I know I've talked at length about the business context. Here's another really just kind of just, I wouldn't say business context, but just when you're doing data center moves, disaster recovery, and you're having to plan for power requirements. You're having to plan for AC and cooling, and raised floor areas and things like that. So being able to go out and through part of that discovery process, being able to go out and collect, and then query. So I can go out in this case and say, show me, all the devices out there that are putting out, this many watts per CPU, and they've got this many CPUs. Why? Well, number one, if I'm disaster recovery, I'm saying I need to make sure I got all the power and generators and everything on the other side set up I need to. Same for, if I got to get a mirror image of this as a standby, I need to make sure I get the right units. But also if I'm doing that data center consolidation, because the very devices I want to target first are going to be the big power consumers. They're the big heat outputters. And so being able to go and collect this kind of data, so I can go out there and say, show me all the high consumption, power devices, or show me all the devices putting out, over so many BTUs of heat in my data center. And those are the machines I'm going to look for first when it comes to, trying to get rid of 3 servers and put everything on one. I want to look for those that are, more energy efficient, as opposed to, these that are putting out, thousands of BTUs every day. So there's great detail and data, both from an application and device perspective. But then when you get into the networking side, you get into the operating system, OS and application lifecycle. So understanding what's coming up for warranty and support, understanding heat and power consumption in the data center. Those are the things that you very rarely think about. But for all of those goals or initiatives that I've talked about, those are all key needs to support the almost must-haves in some form or fashion, even if you have to get it manually. But you can see just from the limited amount that we've viewed and looked at in here, the volume of data that we're talking about being able to collect and of course manage when you're talking about being able to do this manually. So being able to maintain even one of those maps and keep it up to date, with all the changes that happen every day and all the software updates and network updates, that can be time consuming even on a limited scale. Once you get up to a full size organization, that's where BMC Discovery can help. And then you can get it deployed quickly. You have results, in really hours. And then you're just really kind of filling in the last 2 or 3 percentile, typically over the next week or two as you go kind of ferreting things out. But the bulk of your environment, within 2 to 3 days, you're going to have a great understanding of what's out there. And then you can start going in and fine tuning it and whittling things down where you can start getting some specifics for your information. But this is something you can get quick time to value on. And in terms of the data that you can extrapolate out of it and the reports and the metrics and stuff that you can get from it are critical for a whole host of processes and initiatives that you might have. So I know we've got just a few minutes till the quarter hour that we're promising you. So if anybody has any questions, and feel free to throw them out. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody's time. I hope everybody's able to get something of value out of today. And if there are any questions, and you think of one after today's webinar presentation, please reach out to us, and myself, one of my cohorts, or somebody at Flycast will get you an answer, get you a response.
Thank you, Cal. Great presentation. And I think if we had several hours, it would still be difficult to show all the value that you can get from the Helix Discovery solution. We do have a few questions in here that maybe you can touch on briefly, and then we can always schedule a follow-up to go more in depth, since I know we're coming up to time here. But one person just asked about is it really a good idea to discover devices on our wireless subnets? Do you have any comments or maybe guidance there?
I, I I don't know of any reason why not. I mean, unless there's something, unless maybe there's some bad experience maybe behind that question. I'm not sure, but I've never had a second thought about doing it or had customers that have had any issues in doing it. Then because there is, nothing installed, and you can limit, if you want to go in and limit what kind of information, there's of course default, call them, queries or default information it collects, but you always have the ability to go in if you're worried about, capacity over cellular. You can always scale that back to where, if you just need a couple of, bits of information off of it, and all of this, all the other detail is just minutia, then we can just leave it out. You can whittle that down to be extremely efficient, just based on what you need. So we don't have to grab the whole kit and caboodle from everybody. We can fine tune that, based on the type of device, and based on knowing, that we're looking at the cellular network, we can go in and fine tune that discovery run specifically to make sure it operates, if bandwidth is your concern there.
Okay, no, thank you, Colin. Yeah, I would think there might be, some security benefits, right, to discovering everything, even on the wireless subnets.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's a potential vector, for security threats. If it connects at any point, physically or logically to the network, it's a value to know about it.
But definitely, Michael, we're happy to reach out and answer that in more detail, or we'd be interested to hear a little bit more about some of, what you're thinking are concerns there that maybe we didn't think of. And then Kyle, the other question we have is just asking about how integrated with Splunk the discovery solution is, and and I would assume, potentially integrating with other BMC products as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have multiple integrations out of the box for things like Splunk, for things like um, well, there's numerous ITSM tools, of course, because this is all designed, obviously to feed into the BMC ITSM tools, but also to, there's out of box interface for ServiceNow customers, to be able to leverage this discovery data. So there's a broad range of out of the box interfaces, but also open APIs to be able to leverage, query the data that's being collected, and to be able to, to pipe that data into whatever, external app, you might want it in. So it can easily be, you know, uh, leveraged in the existing environment without having to replace everything with, doesn't have BMC in front of it.
Thank you, Kyle. I don't see any new or other questions here. So again, to the audience, thank everyone for attending. And Kyle, we just got some feedback from Michael, and he was happy with the answers, or appreciate you going into detail on those. So our pleasure, Michael. And if there's any follow-up interest or questions, we're happy to answer those. And to the full group and audience, guys, please feel free to reach out to us. You can go to our website. We have a chat at the bottom. You can start talking to some of our specialists. And if you have any questions, needs, or just simply want to, look further into BMC Helix Discovery, we're happy to set up more of a personalized demo discovery call and see if that's something that works well for your organization. So with no more questions, Kyle, thank you again for the presentation, and I hope everyone here has a great day.
Thank you all.